Beadle's first crack at the big time ended rather abruptly when the young striker was summoned into the office at Tottenham by their manager Ossie Ardiles. He called me in and asked if I thought I deserved the money I was earning, recalls Beadle, now in charge of Hereford FC, who go into Thursday's FA Cup second-round replay against Fleetwood as the last non-league team left in the competition. It made a change for Ossie because usually he wouldn't speak to me at all. But that was the end of me at Spurs. Watford showed an interest and I knew I should go there to play. Single quote. Beadle was on £500 a week at the time, a grand sum for his part-time players at Hereford, who play in the 7th-tier Southern Premier League, but a fraction for Jamie Vardy and his teammates who might be up next at Edgar Street. 45 years after Hereford's legendary win against Newcastle, Ronnie Radford and all that, the club were back on the cup trail. For Beadle, the attention on the club is a flashback to the time he was briefly in the limelight as a 20-year-old striker, signed by Tottenham chief executive Terry Venables for £300,000 from Gillingham. Beadle recalls, I was told to jump on a train with my manager Damien Richardson without having a clue where we were going. We got into London, tubed to Hyde Park, and disappeared into one of those posh hotels. Damien went to reception and we were ushered around the corner. There, sitting on a sofa at the bar, was Terry Venables. I was 6 feet 2 inches, had a decent touch and supplied goals as well as scored them. A bit like Teddy Sheringham. Once the deal had been done, Gillingham allowed me to train with Spurs before I joined them officially. In the summer of 1992, my first session was a practice game so that Paul Gascoigne could show the Lazio physios who had flown over that he'd recovered from his knee surgery. We played a 1-2 that Gaza scored from, and he gave me a high five as we ran back to the center circle. Single quote. Unfortunately, that was about as good as it got for Beadle at White Hart Lane. He made the first team squad but never played, while reserve team pals Sol Campbell and Nick Barmby did make the jump. He also felt isolated in the big club atmosphere. I was a shy kid then and found it a bit cliquey. I got on with everyone but there was no support. That's the way it was back then. The attitude was sink or swim. Single quote. Beadle, now 45, did eventually learn to swim, playing for 9 different clubs including Bristol City and Bristol Rovers, where he developed good strike partnerships with Marcus Stewart and Barry Hales. He now reflects on Spurs as a tough but valuable learning experience and has learned the do's and don'ts of management from those he's worked under until his retirement in 2003. Sam Allardyce and John Ward were the two who had the biggest influence. He says, Sam was my manager at Notts County. He was very strict but fair with it, and forward-thinking. He liked to have a good camaraderie with the players, but you knew not to cross him. I also remember him setting up the trip to play games in Dubai and Bangkok. I'm not a great flyer, and they put me next to a lad called Kevin Rapley who was also pretty nervous. When we came down to land between 2 mountains with the plane swinging from side to side, Kevin and myself were pretty much hugging each other with fear until we touched down. Single quote. Less inspirational was his ex-Rovers manager Ian Holloway. I'd like the career he's had, so hats off to him. But his motivational management style can be a bit juvenile after a while. I know some players who have cringed at what he said after matches. Single quote. Beadle's managerial career has been a slow burner. 3 successful years at non-league level with Newport County marred by a touchline ban for confronting the 4th official in an FA Cup tie against Swansea. Hereford FC, the club that has replaced the extinct Hereford United, seems to be a good fit. He has won 2 consecutive promotions and taken them to Wembley for an FA Vase final. You see some league managers fail and still get more chances. I am having to work from the bottom up, he says. We have long trips for Tuesday night games to places like Kings Lynn, which means players either have to take time off work or we have to do without them. Single quote. Beadle worked as a landscape gardener for 4 years, but the birth of his 5th child, Poppy, 19 months ago, has seen him become a stay-at-home dad while his wife works full-time as a sales director. It's always been my philosophy to leave the football at the front door. I get everything out of my system in the hour's drive back home after matches, he says. Neutrals would love to see Hereford reach the third round. Having 2016 Premier League champions Leicester visit Edgar Street would bring back so many memories of 1972 when Radford and Ricky George led the Bulls to a 2-1 victory against Malcolm McDonald's Newcastle, also proving the turning point for the career of a young broadcaster called John Motson. Volunteers have been working round the clock to shovel snow off the pitch so the replay with Fleetwood can go ahead, and Beadle doesn't hide away from the old stories about the club. I think history plays a big part in every club and more so with us, he says. If we hadn't had that FA Cup day in 1972, we wouldn't be as well known as we are. We have that team to thank for that. Ronnie comes to the games fairly frequently. So does Ricky. We want to see them keep coming. I have pictures of that match in my office. There are reminders in the foyer of the ground. They are a reminder of what Hereford can achieve with endeavor, motivation and togetherness. Single quote. Beadle may not have achieved Harry Kane-like status at Spurs as a centre forward, but he might just write some history as a manager of Hereford.